60 Minutes Rewind.
When Hurricane Katrina blew through New Orleans almost 4 months ago, thousands of people left in the city were trapped with no food, no water, no shelter, and were desperate to escape the devastation. The bridge that spans the Mississippi River from New Orleans to Gretna was one of the few ways out until police from Gretna used force to stop pedestrians from crossing it. Since most of the police officers were white and most of the evacuees were black, the incident quickly took on racial overtones. We wondered why, under any circumstances, people who were only trying to walk out of a devastated city could be prevented from reaching relative safety. So we went to New Orleans to find out. But as with so many things in America, when it comes to race, the answer is hardly ever black and white. The bridge where the incident took place is called the Crescent City Connection, linking the city of New Orleans with the west bank of the Mississippi River. It was Wednesday, 3 days after Katrina, when thousands of people started to walk across the bridge. Some 6,000 were put on buses. The exodus continued the next day when a group of tourists who had been staying in the French Quarter started heading in that direction. Along the way, they were joined by hundreds of locals. But when this group tried to cross the bridge, they were met by a line of armed Gretna policemen who fired shotguns over their heads, told them Gretna was closed, and turned them back. We found 8 people who were on the bridge that day. Kathy Golden, who now lives in Boston, was visiting her hometown with her daughter, her son, and 3 of their friends. Larry Bradshaw and Lori Beth Slonsky, both paramedics from San Francisco, were in town for a convention. They all met the morning they were forced to leave the hotel where they'd been staying since the hurricane.
There was no electricity or plumbing, and so after 4 days, it just became, I'm sure, a danger to not just the hotel for us. We needed to get out.
Please help us.
They joined thousands of people who had been left behind in New Orleans and were walking the streets looking for help.
Yeah, how can we get out of town?
200 people from the hotel ended up stranded across from the police department's command post.
A gentleman came out and identified himself as one of the commanders. And he said, I have a solution. I have buses waiting for you across the bridge.
With that assurance, they joined hundreds of other people who were walking towards the bridge to Gretna. These pictures were taken that day by a CBS News crew that was driving across the bridge. They show groups of evacuees approaching a line of policemen holding shotguns. The police car says Gretna Police. Kathy Golden told us that when her group reached the police line, they were told there were no buses and they were stopped with a shotgun blast. What was your reaction when you heard the gunshot?
I was scared at first. I've heard gunshots before because I live in an inner city area, but not a shotgun, and I was concerned about my safety and those who were with me.
One of the people on the bridge with Kathy Golden was Sharon Holloman. Did you see the police fire their guns, or did you just hear them?
We saw it. We were close enough to them. They'd racked their shotguns and let off a warning shot. We were this far away. As far away from you as I am.
Larry Bradshaw, who was at the front of the group, says he tried to get an explanation why they were being turned back.
The only 2 explanations we ever received was, one, we're not going to have any Superdomes over here, and this is not New Orleans.
What did that mean to you?
To me, that was code language or code words for, we're not having black people coming into our neighborhood.
With nowhere to go, they set up a makeshift camp in the middle of the highway. These pictures, taken by the evacuees, show some of the children who were there. The plan was to spend the night on the bridge and the next day try to cross again. But then a vehicle with Gretna police markings drove up.
He sped down in his cruiser, and over the loudspeaker, he just continuously said, "Get the off the bridge."
What?
"Get the off the bridge," and would point his gun at some people.
He pointed his gun.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, a helicopter dropped close to the encampment, and its downdraft blew things everywhere, forcing the evacuees off the bridge. They believe that the motive was racism. Why do you think you were turned away?
I think because the group was 95% African American.
Is that the way you all feel?
Yes.
Definitely.
Do you have any evidence to support that?
A group of people trying to leave the city that's predominantly African American, and you have the officers who are white. That's the way it appears, and in that situation, that's the way you feel. We weren't given any information as to why we couldn't leave. It's just appearance alone would make me feel that way.
We're not a predominantly white, racist community that some people may assume that because we live in the South, because we're in New Orleans, that that's just the way it is.
Ronnie Harris is the mayor of Gretna. He spoke with us because he feels strongly that the Gretna Police Department's actions on the bridge had nothing to do with race and have been greatly misunderstood.
Our community is one that understands compassion, one that understands that we have to give where we can, but when there is none, you have to take care of your own population first. And that is what we were faced with.
Gretna is a middle-class suburb whose population of 17,500 is mostly white, but there is a substantial black minority, 35%. According to the mayor, from day one after the hurricane, Gretna was in no position to help outsiders.
The city of Gretna was completely on its own. Our entire services were disrupted. No city services, no electricity. We had no shelter. We had no medical services. We were hit by Category 4 hurricane. What were people expecting us to do?
And on day one, had you heard about the looting that had started in New Orleans?
I saw brief reports, and quite frankly, I was embarrassed to see the free-for-all of not taking food and water, but goods and items, vandalism, civil unrest, civil disobedience, and it sickened me.
Fires have broken out across the New Orleans area, most of them started by looters.
And the looters are just about anybody, from old men to little girls.
The mayor's image of New Orleans came from media reports like these that emphasize chaos, anarchy, looting, and violence.
Who's next? There are also reports of rape and violence. If you're in New Orleans at night, you stand a good chance of being shot.
So this environment of police officers being shot, citizens lying dead in the street, images of looting going on in the city of New Orleans made me realize that our community was in a crisis far greater proportion than just of the hurricane.
His concern increased on Wednesday when thousands of people from New Orleans, mostly desperate poor African Americans, started walking across the bridge towards Gretna.
It started as a trickle, then it began quite heavily. From our estimates, between 5,000 and 6,000 people amassed on the west bank of the river. Now that's our side of the river, the Gretna side.
The number of people fleeing the city was so large that the Gretna police commandeered transportation to bus them out of town. Over the next 24 hours, the police say they bused 6,000 evacuees from New Orleans. At the same time, police were on guard against reports of looting.
All of this was crashing down on all of us who were in charge, had to make decisions in a crisis mode.
And that's what led to the police chief's decision to seal off Gretna?
Something had to be done.
Did the police chief consult with you before he sealed off the town?
It was his decision, of which I supported wholeheartedly.
We had to make a decision because we did not have the wherewithal to continue and to evacuate thousands and thousands of more people.
Glad to see you, Mayor.
Arthur Lawson is the chief of police in Gretna. We wanted to ask him about his decision to shut down the bridge, but he declined our request. But he did speak with a CBS News reporter shortly after the incident.
You know, our job was to secure our city. We did our best to evacuate those that came over, but we could not continue to evacuate the entire city of New Orleans.
You say you sealed the city because you wanted to protect the city and protect the residents of your city.
Protect the lives of our residents, that's right.
Protect them from what? Protect them from whom?
You had to be there to understand and witness total chaos, total mayhem, the lack of information. That is what was facing us.
And firing a shotgun, was that justified?
When law enforcement is present, order is expected. Without it, terror and mayhem can ensue.
So you felt you had to condemn everyone because there might be some bad apples in that bunch?
Absolutely not.
When I say condemn, you're turning them around. You had to turn everyone around, old folks and children, because there might be some bad apples with them.
What we did was seal that location off, just like a dead end, because there was no safety or security available to wherever they were going. It did not exist, was not there.
Okay, then let me rephrase it. You didn't let anyone into your community, including old women and children, because you thought some bad apples might have come in with them.
The crowd was desperate. The crowd had gone through some unbelievable sights and sounds and the devastation hurricane, and I understand they were looking for safety and security, something that I could not provide. It was as simple as that.
That's a lame excuse. Moved by the chair.
Oliver Thomas is the president of the New Orleans City Council. The day the Gretna police put a ban on pedestrians crossing the bridge, he says he was watching from his car.
Well, hold on a second now. I can't walk across the bridge? And that's the state's bridge. So who gave you the authority to stop that walk? It was nonviolent. There weren't people walking with shotguns and rifles. They had to walk through shotguns and rifles.
How do you feel about the way those people were treated?
It's not humane to intimidate women and children, old people, many who were on their last leg. If you could see the condition of people walking across a bridge, it was literally the only way you can walk is one step at a time, but it was one calculated step at a time.
The police chief and the mayor have said that the police officers felt they were facing an unruly crowd, and they felt threatened.
They felt what?
Threatened.
They felt threatened by dehydrated, starved, tired people. Sounds like they need a new police force.
I'm sure that they were very good people. They were scared people. They were desperate people. And unfortunately, contained within that crowd was a criminal element. That criminal element burned, looted, stole, threatened, and terrorized.
Look, people took advantage of this storm and took advantage of this situation, this catastrophe, all over the region. Guess what? There are people who do that. But do you penalize and victimize everybody else because of it?
We had no more to offer here than they did in New Orleans. We did not have food. We did not have water. We did not have shelters here.
We weren't asking for food, water, or shelter. We were asking for the ability to walk out of New Orleans.
We did secure our community. I do not apologize for shutting the bridge down. My job and responsibility to this community is to make sure that it's safe, the people and their property are safe in this community.
People in Gretna aren't apologizing either. Signs thanking the police chief and his department have sprouted in many of Gretna's front yards.
I salute each and every brave police officer.
And the city council unanimously passed a resolution saying that allowing individuals to enter the city posed an unacceptable risk to the safety of the citizens of Gretna. They seem to be saying that there's a limit to compassion, that there's only so much you can do in circumstances like this to help people.
Well, I think we're finding that out. I think we're finding that out in America right now today.
Does this have any national significance, do you see it? Does it say something about America?
Katrina washed away a lot of veils and took a lot of face masks off. Your politics cannot be bigger than your humanity. And in this case, we didn't need politics, we needed humanity.
The Louisiana Attorney General's office is investigating whether laws were broken or civil rights were violated on the bridge to Gretna.